Just let me know if I speak too much, because sometimes I tend to info dump.
No, but like, it's a podcast. That's the point.
Yeah,
Even then, for info dumping.
I guess so. Being able to have that balance that you're super ambitious and your baseline's always going to shift, but taking that time out for yourself, your family, your loved ones, and being able to sit with that and being able to actually like feel a little bit proud about yourself. On the internet, people are like, you're young, take risks. For me, it has to be very calculated, because when you're across in a new country, you can't just drop things and get along, because you've made sacrifices to get where you are. And I think it's quite important to also review like the cons along with the pros. The best indicator, the best KPI is your audience. You're going to find your audience and they're going to tell you. When you look at it, it's just creators are mini founders in themselves, and the way they operate is like a little media company that they are running by themselves.
Amazing. Sam, welcome to the Empower Sounds podcast. I am so happy to be having this conversation with you today. Can you please start by introducing yourself?
Hi, my name is Samraddhi. You can also call me Sam. That's how I usually go by professionally in London. I have been working at the intersection of AI, content, and growth for the past decade or so. Really love it. Been a content creator for a really long time, and now I'm trying to figure myself out here in London between all the chaos and the fast-paced life. It's been fun.
That's so exciting. And today I really want to just go through your journey of the past decade and talk a little bit about the world of being a young content creator and really navigating, like you said, career. But you started so young. So let's go back to 13-year-old Sam. You made your first videos. What was it like starting your channels, and why did you start? And talk us through that moment.
I remember watching these YouTubers from Europe and America back then. Back in India, we didn't have a lot of YouTubers who were making the sort of content that I wanted to consume. And I was like, you know what? I want to be like them. I want to make videos. I want to just have fun. I had no clue how to even start a YouTube channel. I thought you need to get some sort of license not to post videos. Apparently, that wasn't the case. So I just picked up my phone, randomly recorded a video, and put it on the internet. And at that time, it was super cringy, I'm not gonna lie. But I just posted it, and there was my YouTube channel, and I just figured out things along the way. So I didn't really have a plan as to what I want to do at the minute, but it was a super fun journey, I'd say. It's been a learning curve since I started back when I was 13, and I've been doing it for like nine and a half years now. So definitely learned a lot along the way.
That's beautiful. And I feel like a lot of people don't start because they're scared of being cringe, or like you said, they don't know how to start, they don't know what to do. So how did you just do it? How did you give yourself the pep talk and just start?
Yeah, I think I was really fortunate because my parents were very supportive, and I have an older sister, and she's also very supportive of me in doing these things. And so it was just them pushing me to do whatever I wanted. Obviously, I was very shy when I was little. I don't know if you can tell right now or not, but I'm very introverted. I was this shy little kid trying to stay in my own bubble, being invisible as much as I can, and just trying to stay in my own lane. So I think through videos and through creating videos, I was able to express myself, sitting in a room, just being able to talk to the camera, because I wasn't really able to do that in front of my friends. I didn't even have many friends back then. And that's how I started creating videos. And when I initially started, I remember hiding it from all of my classmates because it wasn't a cool thing back then. Like 2016, it wasn't cool to be a YouTuber, to create videos. It is cool now. But back then in South Asia, it was like, this is the weird kid who creates videos and puts it on YouTube about like what DIY is. So it wasn't like something cool. And so I hid it from my classmates. And I remember one of them found out about it later, and she was like, you didn't tell me you had like 300 subscribers on YouTube. And I'm like, yeah, well, do not tell it to anyone else because I'm going to get bullied in school. So it was a very interesting journey, I'd say, hiding it from my classmates, but like going home after my school, doing my homework, and then creating videos and putting it out on the internet every other week. And you'd get these random strangers commenting on your videos. You'd be like, oh my God, people are actually watching it. They like what they see. And I think ever since then, I kept going. And it was just fun for me. I did not have a motive behind as to like, I want to become like a really rich and famous person when I started out. It was all about I just want to have fun with it. I want to have a voice of my own, because back then I didn't really have that. Obviously, I'm not going to lie if I said that there wasn't like a point in time where I wanted to reach like, say, 100K subscribers. I used to dream of it when I was a kid. And now that I've like passed that threshold, I'm like, yeah, well, whatever.
That's so fascinating. And I want to talk a little bit more about the idea of like, you set this goal that you really, really want, like you said, 100K. And that's something a lot of people want. Like they want to be seen. They want, like you said, they want to have a community. They want to share their message, their ideas, their thoughts, their creativity. And so it's a big deal. But what was it like actually reaching that milestone? And like, how has it changed your perception around goals? Because once you start meeting these really big goals and you like realize life just continues, how was your relationship with that?
I think in the longest time I can remember, I was a very ambitious kid. I used to always like dream big. That's what my parents taught me, dream big, Sam. Like in South Asia, I think there's one big conception or like perception that girls should stick in their own lane. You should be polite, you should be this way, you should be nice. And when I was growing up, my parents were really supportive of me. Even my grandparents were really supportive, and so I never felt the need to make myself look small in front of other people. And I think when your parents have supported you and they've got you back in terms of these things, it makes you be a little more confident about yourself in your own skin. And even though like the surroundings, the classmates, school was miserable for me, as I think I've already spoken about it multiple times, but school was a really bad time for me. But overall, outside of that, I found my creative outlet through YouTube. I had my family support, and so I kept going. Obviously, I had big dreams, like 100K is one of them. Being able to like fly abroad is another one of them. Being able to travel is another one of them. I think when you keep achieving those goals, your baseline tends to shift. And it's not just me. I've seen it in a lot of high achievers. A lot of people that I meet, a lot of successful founders, creators, you'll see they start from nowhere and they have reached a certain threshold and they're like, oh my God, man, I need to go do this other thing. And I think it's something which comes naturally to you, that there's going to be a point in time where you're going to meet that threshold, you're going to be happy for like a day or two, and you're going to move on. You're going to be like, okay, next goal, next thing. And that's certainly how I live my life as well. My baseline keeps shifting. So right now I'm like, oh, I want to earn X amount of money. And maybe when I do that, I'll be like, you know what? I want more. So I've made peace with the thing that my baseline is definitely going to shift when I keep achieving and hitting those goals. And I think it's super important, just take a moment to yourself and with your friends and with your family and sit with that thought and actually be able to like, you know what, like I actually did that. That's super cool. I remember like this year I went to Cannes Lions and that was something which I didn't even think of. And then I went there and like, you know what, that was super cool. That happened, sit with it for like even a day or two or be like, that was super sick. And like, I'm so glad I could do that. So just being able to have that balance that you're super ambitious and your baseline's always going to shift, but taking that time out for yourself, your family, your loved ones, and being able to sit with that.
That's so interesting, and I definitely resonate with that because I have that as well, and I'm learning to, because when I would achieve something, I would get this like anxiety of like, what is the next thing? Like I now have like this, like, what is the next level? Like, how can I get it? And recently I feel like I've been reflecting on a different way to set goals that doesn't feel as anxiety driven and as like I'm running after something constantly. So has achieving a lot of the things that you wanted starting out redefined the way that you look at goals and success for yourself?
For me, it wasn't just about achieving, like working towards a single goal. That's never been how I've been working. I think I'm very multidimensional. So when I'm doing something that is not my sole focus, I mean, I was doing YouTube and 100K was like it was a goal for me. But at the same time, I was also like, my parents always prioritize education for me. So at the same time, I was like, oh, I want to get a master's and I want to do it from really good schools. I went to LSE and I was so lucky enough, I got in. I was like, okay, well, that happened. So I think keeping the goals multidimensional for me has not, I did not really have a tunnel vision for that specific goal. So it has helped me and my mind ease a bit in terms of that. Because otherwise, if you are making too many sacrifices for that single goal, I feel like I'm going to be disappointed in me if I just have that tunnel vision. I'm just chasing without even living my life. I'm going to be like, okay, maybe that's not the right thing to do, because my relationships with my friends and my family is suffering. What am I even doing in my life? And I'm a kind of person who tends to think in like, I get existential dread almost every other week. So I'm thinking about, oh my God, what is even the purpose of my life? What am I doing here? Sometimes I'm this brilliant person who can think of these amazing things and being able to achieve that and being able to execute and act on the things that I think of. And the other days I'm like, well, this is such a big universe and just like a tiny particle in it. What am I even doing in my life? Does this even matter? And so, I mean, just to like sum it up, I guess, it's that for me, in particular, it has been multidimensional always. I haven't had just one focus and keep working towards it. Might be a bad thing, might not be a bad thing, but so far it's been working for me, and let's see how it works out in the future.
That's really beautiful, and I think that is such good advice for people who are tunnel vision on one specific area, whether that be health or career or relationships. You've shared in the past that going to LSE was transformative for you, and even more so than any like viral moment. So can you please tell us a little bit more about that, and like why did you have that pull to moving to the UK and LSE and your experiences with that?
Yeah, I remember when I graduated from my high school. I wanted to move abroad. My parents were like, I think you should go and study abroad and look how, give yourself a new challenge to see how it feels. So I did apply for my undergrad, but I wasn't able to go due to COVID, which was very surprising, but that did not happen. So ever since that, when I did my undergrad, I had this focus on my mind. I had this thing in my mind that, I'm going to get a master's from abroad. And so I was just weighing my options of what I should and shouldn't do. Back then, people were asking me, like, why do you even want to go and study abroad? Like, you've got a YouTube channel, you're making enough money, what's the point? Like, you can just stay here full-time, be a YouTuber, and, try, just expand on that, become your own, like, start your own brand later, do whatever you want, like the typical influencer route. But I guess there's been this thing inside me. I've been very curious and I always want to learn new things. So I was like, I'm going to apply to these media schools because I love media. I love communications. My undergrad was in economics and marketing. And I was like, I think this is the right step because I already know the economics of things. And if I want to level up, getting to know the media and how things actually work would actually be beneficial for me. So I applied to LSE, I applied to Erasmus, I applied to a bunch of other schools. I got accepted into all of them. I was like, wait, what? Like, I was 20 years old. I got into LSE and then, I was like, you know what? Like, it's a hard decision between Erasmus and LSE. Which one do you choose? Because they're super prestigious. I picked LSE firstly because it's based in London. It's a 1-year degree. And the main reason for me to pick LSE was that you get so many high achievers in one place and the alumni network is just massive. So you don't even need to like stay and study media, which was like, media was super awesome. I got to learn the theory and all of that. But behind that, I was also able to pick up another like set of electives. I was able to pick pricing strategy, brand strategy, and being able to learn those things, which was super cool. So I got this, again, multidimensional thing going on within my degree, which not a lot of students I know from my batch who did that, but it was super fun. There was a big contrast which I noticed between my formal education in India versus in the UK. And it was that I was able to think more independently. I have this thought process where I think in very abstract things throughout my journey. I just think in very abstract ideas and then connect the dots between those things and being able to present that. So LSE really gave me that chance to be able to contribute to the classrooms, being able to form those essays and then just present it to the class. Initially, I'm not going to lie, I did struggle a lot. I was like, this is something I did not sign up for. It's super hard, it's super different. But within a month or two, my teachers were super helpful. I'm always going to say this, like LSE professors, the best ones I've ever had. And then my classmates and my friends that I made at LSE were also super helpful. They helped me figure out the system, how it worked. I was able to craft essays and all of that. And that was the thing. But the other part was the challenge of moving countries in itself. So I was again very fortunate that my sister was already in the UK. So given an average student who's moving countries, it's much harder for them. And I acknowledge the privilege that I have, that I'm super grateful for this. So I didn't have to figure everything out from scratch. But at the same time, I guess there was this shift where I could finally feel free in certain regards, which I wasn't able to do so back in India. India is still very conservative when it comes to queerness, when it comes to disabilities. And so when I moved to the UK, I was actually able to have that structured support within my university, being able to talk to those people. And that shifted that really shifted my mindset. And I think it unleashed something in me that, oh, you know what, maybe I am brilliant. And these are the things which are part of my brilliance. And I think that's something which I wouldn't have been able to do if I just stuck in my lane, became a full-time YouTuber and go down the influencer route. And I think this was super important, and it was part of the journey of becoming who I am and who I'm going to be in the future.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's really interesting how, despite the traction that you've had on your channels, you don't want to go into the influencing route full time. And it's really nice that you're creating this new template that's you can use that and have that as a thing, but have other parts as well. So what other things are you interested in? And I know you said you're figuring it out, and this community is all about figuring it out together, but what other elements do you want to infuse into the career that you're creating? And how are you learning about that?
Yeah, so I think one of the things which I learned about LSE was that LSE's got this community called LSE Generate. It's all about entrepreneurship. And so through that, I was able to meet students who were doing their own thing. And I was like, this is super cool, start your own company. This is something which I've been considering for a really long time. I do not know if I'm there yet, being able to become a full-time founder or whatever. But I've learned this thing where content creation and strategy that is set in stone, that's gonna be there forever. I'm not gonna let anyone or anything push that away, because even when I'm talking to people, they're well, are you gonna put that aside? What are you gonna do with that? And I'm that's not gonna happen. I literally put years of effort into building that, so that's definitely gonna be there. But on top of that, I've learned to take on new projects. So for example, consulting startups is another thing which I've been doing, and it's been very rewarding because you get to see that you're actually helping these companies out, and you have all of this knowledge, and now it's just you can share it with other people. So that's something which I've been doing. But aside from that, been taking on roles, full-time or part-time, whatever, enabled by, so that I can learn these things by working at these organizations and within a structure and with these teammates. Because I think in content creation, there's this one thing which it can get very isolating, because you're basically working by yourself. Okay, you've got editors, you've got managers, but they're not really working with you. You're working by yourself mostly. And so it can be a bit isolating, and there's this thing where you might not get the chance to work at a proper structured organization, and that might hinder your chances of becoming a founder in the future because you do not know how to delegate tasks. And so I think working in a structured space for a bit helps me figure that thing out, that, okay, well, this person is amazing, this person's brilliant, and I got to learn this X thing from them really quickly because they were able to help me. And I think that is something which I've been figuring out, especially in my early 20s. And I think it's just a bit of mix and match and trying to experiment to see what works, what doesn't work. I guess a lot of it in your early 20s is especially about taking calculated risks. I know on the internet people when you're young, take risks. For me, it has to be very calculated, because when you're across in a new country, you can't just drop things and get along, because you've made sacrifices to get where you are. And I think it's quite important to also review the cons along with the pros. So taking calculated risks and doubling down on things that work. Sometimes things aren't going to work, you have to accept it, but you have to adapt really quickly to that as well.
That's so interesting. Thank you for sharing. And when you were saying that, yes, there's a lot of differences between being a creative, working in the corporate space, working in the founder space, But also there is a massive overlap between like being a founder and being a creator, because people don't realize, but you're building a brand and you're building a business, and like there is many similarities in terms of personal branding and all that other like admin side. And so how do you think being a creator has helped you learn a little bit more, like bring a new lens into your investigation around entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I don't know about like how most creators do it, but the way I operate in my creator zone is that I've built like this mini media company around myself now, where I am the creative person, but throughout these years, I did not really have any support. I was basically doing most of it myself, editing, admin, all of it. Now I've got support to help, like from people to help me out. But like when I initially started, how I did it was basically just start filming. Okay, this is how you film. You know what, like I started filming vertically, and back then YouTube shorts or like vertical short form videos weren't even a thing. Maybe I was ahead of my time, who knows. But yeah, so I figured out how to film videos through YouTube and then being able to edit it. So I had this laptop and I downloaded this software. I was like, okay, I'm gonna figure this thing out by myself, and just leveled up slowly from there, then learn like Premiere Pro, and I was like, this seems so much harder than it actually is. Just leveling up through that. And I think the overlap between being a founder and being a creator is that creators are also founders. So a lot of it is just testing, trying, reiterating, and then just like seeing what works, what doesn't work. If it works, doubling down on that. And that is something which I've done as well. So with my content, testing out a bunch of ideas, seeing what works, what doesn't work. If it works, double down on it, film it again, try to test it, and come up with new ideas. That's how you form a community. Other things, I guess, are just admin stuff. People call it boring. Oh, talking to people is boring. Brand deals, all of that. You just outsource most of it. For the most part of my life, I was doing it myself, which is basically like I got to learn how to work with brands, like super big brands, Notion and like Amazon and UNICEF. Like you get to work with these brands, and you're like 16 years old, 18 years old, and you get to learn a lot just directly by working with them, which I don't think even in corporate spaces you're able to do that until you reach like a semi-senior or like middle position. I don't know. So that sort of overlap is there, which I personally love to do. But now that I've grown slightly older, I've realized that you can't do everything by yourself. And that is another overlap which founders realize, and that's when they hire the good people for them to work for them. So learning that bit, recruiting people who understand you, who understand your vision and will work for you, not against you, is super important. So when you look at it, it's just creators are mini founders in themselves, and the way they operate is like a little media company that they are running by themselves. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot more overlaps. But there's also this thing where creators are taken less seriously than founders, which I think is a massive gap when you look at it, because the creator economy is just huge and creators are the key to it. They're the central within the entire creator economy ecosystem. And so in that, you're like, sometimes you do get underestimated. If you tell people, oh, I'm a creator, they'll be like, oh, she does like what? Like create TikTok videos in front of the camera, just dance for a bit. That's not what it is. There's a lot behind the scenes that actually goes into creating those videos. You know, you have to strategize, you have to script the things, you have to see what works and understand the algorithm. I think especially when you've been on the internet for a decade or so, you've been through like all of it, you know, seeing how algorithms change, how audiences react. I was there before even the short form content became mainstream, you know, so you learn through those things. And the creators that I've spoken to who have been on this journey for a really long time, legacy creators as they say it, they've been through their own journey as well. And the people who recently got popular, you'll really get to see the difference between those ones who've been there on the internet for a really long time versus the ones who say recently joined it. And that's like something about those older creators that comes from instincts. They can just act on the instincts and figure things out. Versus the newer ones, they're like, oh, let's chase this other trend, which is not a bad thing, chasing trends. But I think as the economy is shifting, it's becoming less about like jumping on the trends and more about creating a trend yourself. But that's an entire other conversation in itself.
And how do people develop that instinct? Do you think it's just time? Do you think it's just putting in the reps? Or is there anything, like you said, you're a big fan of learning. Is there anything that you would say to creatives who are watching this, who want to hone their craft, that they can go and spend some time learning to develop that instinct?
I think for me, it was a lot about, because I've been doing so long, I really can't tell you the specific X formula that I used. It came naturally to me just by picking things up, testing it out, and seeing what works, what doesn't work. But now things are very different, and when I look at it, there's just so much noise on the internet, you know, there's so much content out there. So which one do you pick? Who do you listen to? I think that's one of the things. So the best thing, again, as I would say, is just start it. Just start it. Because, okay, the first video is going to be cringe. You're going to learn, you know, you learn way more when you're actually doing the thing than by, say, like looking at a video or reading a book or whatever. I mean, those things are still super helpful. Maybe if you want a brand deal, then those videos and those books or those courses or whatever you're taking, that could be helpful. But the best way you can do it is just by testing things out yourself and seeing what works, what doesn't work, because the best indicator, the best KPI is your audience. You're going to find your audience and they're going to tell you, you know what, when I was making videos, my audience used to tell me, your audio is like really bad, just do something about it. And I used to figure things out. Okay, well, the audio is bad, I'm going to, you know, get a microphone or edit it this way. They're going to tell you things. Take that feedback, and this critical feedback is super important as well. It's similar to, again, how founder thinks of their customers. You know, they are on the customer journey and they're trying to figure out the pain points of that customer. I think it's very similar for creators, applying the same blueprint over here and seeing what your audience really wants, and then adjusting according to that is something which you should learn from. And I think that's the best way to get started on being a creator, or even a creative in the I think in the overall space.
That's so helpful. Thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of people are very liberal with their opinions on the internet. So when you take feedback into consideration, it's important. But when you get inundated with comments of do this, change this, you're like this, how do you take it on board and listen to the constructive criticism, but cut out all the noise that doesn't resonate with you? And even sometimes if people are saying something, trust your own instinct and do your own thing instead.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think over the years, what I've learned is that not everyone's gonna like you. I think most people wouldn't like you, let's be honest. Like, most of the videos that we come across, it's not like, oh my God, I love this person. You don't naturally go like that. You usually like, yeah, whatever, just like move on. So you don't want those people. You want the people who are gonna love you and who are gonna like you and who are gonna contribute to your content. And there's a difference, I guess you get to learn that over time. Who means who's gonna have your back, which followers are gonna support you no matter what, and which ones aren't gonna do that. For me, it's been an entire journey in itself, but I think it's super important to have a distinction between what is critical feedback versus what is hate. Hate is something which is commenting about your looks, on things you can't change about yourself. I read this somewhere and it was like, do not point things out about someone if they can't change it within the first 5 seconds. So say I have a pimple, you know, I can't change that. I have a pimple, or, you know, I have a mark on my neck. I can't change that within 5 seconds. Or if I'm thin, I can't change that about myself in 5 seconds. So stop pointing fingers at someone. So if there's something that you can't change about yourself in 5 seconds, discard that, because it's not really about your content, it's about you. And I'm not going to say this thing applies to everyone, because sometimes people are not actually good, and, you know, people have all sorts of opinions about someone's personality or whatever. But I believe I'm a good person. And if you believe so yourself, then I think it's important to have that core and surround yourself with people who also believe in you. So apart from the internet, online, you should have people in your real life who love you for who you are, regardless of, like, if you're a YouTuber or a content creator, whatever. Surrounding yourself with those people who are going to uplift you in real life and offline is super important. And especially if you live in London, there are like so many networks that you can join with so many creators, meet up with them, collaborate with them. Even if you don't live in, like, say, a metropolitan city like London, there's so many online groups. Join one of them. And that just helps you learn things from other people as well, and helps you filter out the noise. And lastly, I think it's just super important to have a thick skin. Because at some point in your life, or through your creative journey, or through any journey, people are gonna comment about things which you don't really like. I think founders don't really have to go through people commenting on, unless you're like super famous. People usually don't care about what you're doing in your personal life, they care about your product, right? But as a creator, you are your own product. So you have to separate that from like your personality versus what you show on the internet. People think they know us super well, you know. There's a parasocial relationship between the creators and the audiences. And this is something which we discussed a lot at LSE as well. But people think they owe things about your life. You know, you owe them things. You don't actually owe anyone anything. You're allowed to be selectively, selective sharing is allowed on the internet. So you shouldn't, I mean, if you're comfortable, then sure. But like for me, it's just having that boundary, setting boundaries is super important. So what you can share versus what you don't want to share. And having those things as well is super important when you're starting out. And that helps you really filter out all the hateful comments as you're moving forward with your journey.
That's so important. And I think I want to chat a little bit more about how you can go about setting those boundaries, because again, like I also come from an Indian background. Boundaries is like, what is boundaries?
Yeah.
Like the first time I learned about boundaries, I was like 19. And I remember like going and having a chat with my family and they were like, what are boundaries? Like,
oh my God, yeah.
No, what the hell is that? And so how did you go about like learning about them, doing the self-exploration? Because everyone's boundaries are different, right? So like understanding what you are and are not comfortable with, and then expressing that, because understanding the boundary is half the challenge. Then actually enforcing it is scary, because you don't want people to dislike you, and you can have a thick skin, but like you don't want to be mean with your boundary. Yeah. And especially like I think women are socialized to be like super giving and kind and this and that, and like not be mean and all that stuff. And so what was your journey with learning how to set those boundaries?
For the longest time, I did not even know what a boundary was, if I'm being honest, like yourself. I maybe picked it up at 20, since when I moved to London, because back in South Asia, yeah, again, as you said, like this.
What is a boundary?
What's a boundary? Like they need to know everything about your life. You owe them things. When I came here, that's what I learned. Like, oh, this is a boundary, and you can have them, which was a very entirely foreign concept. But how I learned what my boundaries were was through this is going to sound absurd, but it was through some of the sharpest men that I have met. And they were like, Sam, you're brilliant, but you need to have some boundaries. You can't make yourself available to everyone all the time. And that is how I actually learned about it, which is super bizarre, because, people think women are more forgiving, they have to make themselves available. And I was in that same mindset. Then I was working in a very male-dominated environment, and I saw no one else apologizing for just existing. And I was like, they're like super brilliant at what they do, but so am I. Like, what am I doing here? And they told me, like, you do not need to be so apologetic about every single thing that you're doing. Like, you're about to, you should have your boundaries about what you want to talk, what you don't want to talk about. And so I tried and enforced that onto not just like my creative journey, but also like in other aspects of my life. Even with friends, having boundaries is super important, because especially when you move across time zones, some of your friends are going to get bitter. That's just the truth of it. They're not going to like who you're becoming. They're going to call you names. I've lost friendships in the past year or so because my friends weren't able to adapt to the person that I was becoming. And I think it's okay to cut people off as well. There's something I've learned just by speaking to these really sharp people around me. And I think one other thing is super important is the best thing that you can do is find yourself a mentor. I think when I got myself a mentor, when I was at LSE gives you mentors. And like there are so many other networks in London who you can like contact to get a mentor for yourself. And those people told me that, they're far more experienced and they've been in the industry, even by the age, people pick things up when they're older. They'll tell you things. So listen to them and try and enforce that in your life, because you're 20 and oh my God, I know everything, I'm super smart. Like I'm the smartest person in the entire world. That's just not the reality. You might be sharp, but you still need people and you still need help along the way. And you need to know when you need the help. So having mentors and having the right support system apart from your family is also super important. You're going to have friends, that's fine. You're going to have teachers who can sometimes be mentors as well. But having a completely external perspective, who is not living your life, who doesn't know like what your life is exactly from the inside, they're going to bring an external perspective, and that can really help you learn things and set boundaries. So yeah, for me it was a whole thing in itself. But now that you bring it up, I'm like, I learned about boundaries maybe a year ago or so.
Still super young,
Yeah.
Like again, coming from the communities that we do, there's many people who never learn about boundaries, and so it's a privilege to be able to even learn as like late as we have. What you said about friendships and like the consequences of boundaries is really real, and that happened to me as well when I changed and started my own business and started a podcast, and like really just stopped being like the cool, fun person that everyone wanted, like that I thought everyone wanted me to be. And that's lonely. Like when you start setting boundaries and you become a new version of you, you have to like, there's a time lag between the person that you are and the person you want to become. And when you like change, yes, you'll attract more like-minded people, but that sometimes takes time. And so how have you found navigating that loneliness of like changing identity and changing like life and moving to a new country and all that stuff?
I think for me, I've been just super introverted, and I've always enjoyed my own company, because growing up, school was miserable for me. I think I've talked about this on the internet multiple times. I've talked about it at my work. When people ask and bring up school, it wasn't a good place for me. And so when I was little, I sort of was in my own bubble, and I really enjoyed that bubble. And congregation was another way. Oh, well, you don't need people in real life. That's not the reality, by the way, but that's how I protected myself from all the noise and all the people who were not going to say good things about me. And I remember one of my classmates, he looked through my Instagram back then, and he was like, oh, well, yeah, like, how are you posing? Like, that's super weird. And he told me that in my classroom. And then suddenly I had this X number of followers. And years later, he's texting me on my Instagram, and he's like, oh my God, you've become so famous. I did not know that. Like, congratulations and this and that. They'll try and be friends with you. So you're going to see people change. And you have to protect yourself from that. And so I learned this very early on that, look, Sam, no one here is gonna have you back. So you gotta have you back by yourself, especially at school. I mean, back when you're home, you have your family, you have your siblings who gonna, support you, or especially like having older siblings. I think you're the older one. Yeah, so you probably know about this. But older siblings protect you from all of that. And when you don't have that, when you're at school and you're by yourself, these mean kids are going to try and bully you in whatever way, shape or form they can. So I just had that. And I think it took me some time. It wasn't until I was in my undergrad I found one of my best friends. And that is when I got to know like what true friendship looks like, because otherwise it was all surface level. You're meeting at school. You're like, okay, yeah, this and that. But like, apart from that, there's this deeper connection, which I actually learned about when I was in my undergrad. And my best friend, we talked about almost everything except for studies. So that's how I knew that true friendships do exist, and they have a solid base, and the base is basically respecting and understanding each other's choices, that you're going to change, and it's like okay to change, and they're going to actually like have the best interests of you in their heart. And that is how you know they're your true friends. And then in London, that is when I really found my sort of like-minded people and really ambitious people. Back in India, I wasn't able to find that circle, mainly because it was during COVID, and then I moved abroad. But also, like, what I felt was that I felt like an outcast throughout my entire life when I was growing up. In my mind, at least, people say that, oh, I thought you were a cool kid. And I'm like, in my mind, I was just super weird. And I kept to myself, I made friends with other outcasts. And sometimes if you look normal, if you're functioning well, if you're friends with the outcasts, these people are going to assume that, oh, well, why are you friend with these weird people? When in reality, maybe I am one of those weird people as well. That's why I don't think that the social hierarchy at school especially, it's super weird. I never really got to learn about that. So I mean, I think you're gonna go through some hard times. You're gonna find people who are not nice. You're gonna find people who are nice, and that is how you learn. So no one can really, I think, escape that route. People are gonna advise you, sure, but you have to take the hard journey and learn it by yourself. There's not a single person I know who hasn't gone through that journey. You need to burn out at some point. You need to be burnt by someone else, and that is how you learn. Because life teaches you some lessons the hard way, and that is how you learn it. That's been the case for me for friendships and finding the groups which I think are okay, this is what it is. But as for loneliness, I think it hasn't really, I'd be lying if I said that I really struggle with loneliness a lot. Definitely there are times where you feel like no one's gonna get you, which is true, but no one gets anyone, let's be honest. You are yourself because you are yourself. You're unique to yourself. And if someone is exactly like you, then you're not unique, yeah? So, I mean, I don't struggle with as much now. I find peace just by being myself. I can go to restaurants, I can eat food, and I meet people and they're like, how are you able to do that? It's so fun. Yeah, it's so fun, exactly. You don't need anyone else when you find that you enjoy your own company, and that is when you think that I'm just confident in my own skin and I really like this.
That's so beautiful. And again, listening to you was so powerful because I feel like there's a lot of overlap in my journey and yours, and I feel the same way around being an outcast and learning to really, I think what you say is you've always loved your own company. I had to learn to bring that self-acceptance in, and it's still a journey I'm on. But do you have any advice for anyone who isn't that way naturally, and they want to have a better relationship with themselves, and they want to go and eat out alone or travel alone or do things alone, and they want to I really think the best life hack in not caring what other people think is learning to love you, accept yourself and just understand yourself and be comfortable with yourself. But that's hard, and we're not taught how to do that, especially again coming from an Indian background. It's a very community driven culture, and so this idea of solo dates or solo travel is inconceivable for a lot of people. And so how do you do that, and how do you develop that good relationship with yourself?
I think the advice that I can give to younger women, especially and queer people, would be that, look, there's going to be a point in your life, especially if you're moving across continents, you're going to be alone at some point, and no one's going to really be there for you all the time. So you have to be there for yourself, and no one's coming to save you. That is one of the harshest truths that I had to learn in life, that there's no one coming to save you, so you have to save yourself. Might be a little bit traumatic for some people, coming from the Indian background that I come from, and being being a little bit weird at school. I really thought that, and I learned that about myself. But the first few things that you can do in order to start loving yourself is to stop caring what other people think. How I did that was, look, these people are insecure in themselves. That's the first thing. They are projecting. Their lives are miserable, and so they have got nothing better to do than to judge you. So firstly, shape your mind into thinking that these people really have nothing to do in their lives, and so they'll project their own insecurities onto you. Once you've started learning that little by little, then you go to, say, a restaurant. I'm gonna say this, make sure, be safe. It's not always safe everywhere. So pick your own battles, and go to a safe place. Maybe do not go out when it's super loud. Go out when it's slightly okay. Go and order food. Be table for one, and I'm gonna order my own food. Do that once. You might hate it once. You'd be like, oh my gosh, it's so boring. I have no one to talk to. But after this point in time, you're going to be like, this is actually so peaceful, and I really like doing it. And that was how it was for me when I started going places myself, when I started traveling by myself. I think travel opened a lot of doors for me. It's usually my sister and I, mainly because she helps me out with the content, and when I'm traveling solo, it typically becomes slightly harder for me to get the content done and manage my own safety. But when I am traveling solo, it's just you have to be a little bit careful again. You are enjoying your own time, you're having fun. But again, having boundaries is super important. I remember once I went to Barcelona and I was traveling by myself. It was super fun, but like at the same time, some weird, creepy people will come to you and like ask all sorts of questions. So maybe lie a little bit when you're doing that as well. Lie a little bit here and there. You have to protect yourself as a woman. And but overall, I'd say it's just learning those little lessons that people are gonna judge you anyways. You know, if you're there by yourself, they're still gonna judge you. If you're there by like with your friends, they're gonna be like, oh, that group of friends, that they're so loud or whatever. So they're gonna judge you no matter what. So stop caring what they think, and just like, no one's gonna even remember it. Yeah. No one's gonna remember it. Like, I remember, I know when I go to a restaurant or wherever I go, it's just that I'm like, sometimes even now I'm like, oh, they're gonna think like I'm wearing this clothes, and then I'm like, when I think about it, what was I wearing last week? I don't even remember it myself. So no one's gonna remember what you're wearing or like whatever you're doing. Just live your life, and these things are, I think they come by experience. So try and do it again, rather than just overthinking it in your head. And also get therapy.
Yes.
Super important.
And if you can't like afford therapy, there's still so many resources out there that are free and accessible at this time.
Yeah.
We're so lucky that there's so many tools. I'll try and do some research and put it in the description.
Yeah, no, I mean, in the UK, there's, if you live in the UK, then there's a lot of mental health resources. I've talked about a lot of it in my social media as well. But also finding the right therapist is another key challenge, which it's been hard. But yeah, you'll find the right one. But super important to get help in terms of your mental health as well.
I agree. And I think like getting therapy like changed me fundamentally as a person. But there was a lot of shame in asking for that help, because again, I think it's a cultural thing of, it's something that is still very stigmatized, of if you accept help, you accept failure. Yeah. And if you accept help, you're saying that you couldn't manage yourself, or that your parents didn't raise you correctly, or that like they didn't do enough, or that you didn't do enough. And so I procrastinated getting help for a long time because I was so scared of what getting help would mean for me. And that was to the detriment of my happiness for a long time. And so what advice do you have, or like what was your journey in actually getting that support, and how do you feel around like that as an idea as well?
When I was growing up, I did not even know that how I was living my life was like different or harder than other people. Did not know I was neurodivergent for a really long time until like a few months ago. So it was the entire journey for me. It was just super coping and masking all the time. I did not know about it. And when I got to know about it this year, I was like, oh, that explains so much. Like, but for me, it was just staying invisible as much as I can. And that builds up, you know, like when you're masking all the time, when you're not even showing who you are to anyone, say apart from your closest, like people that you live with, it is very challenging because you're internalizing a lot of things, and especially with women, South Asian women in general, they don't even know what neurodivergence is. I didn't know about it until I moved to the UK, and people here are like, oh, I'm neurodivergent, I've got this and that. And I'm like, well, like, I remember like one of my colleagues, he pointed out that, like, he asked me, Sam, are you neurodivergent? And I was like, yeah, I think so. And he clocked it faster than I did for myself. And then when I started talking to people, they were like, yeah, there's like something you should basically just might consider. And I spoke with people, and how I was able to figure it out was through therapy. So my therapist she was like, you're super self-aware. So I don't really know, like, you know, therapy in general is like super, they point things out and then you fix that, or like you work on those things. But for me, I was super self-aware already. So she discovered that there was this other part of me that I haven't really talked about or didn't even know existed. And that's how I basically got to know that, okay, there's something definitely different. And so for me, when I was coming out, when I was around 17 years old, that is when I started to looked at, oh, this shit's hard. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm supposed to curse or not.
Okay.
But like, I was like, this is hard. Like, you know, I did not know a single gay person around me back then. And even if there were people, obviously hid it. They're not going to come out in like a tier 2 city in India. So I found my queer friends when I was in undergrad. And I was super lucky because my siblings were super accepting, and some of my friends, I'm not going to say all, but some of my friends were super accepting of me coming out during that time. And then when I was at university, I was like, I get a blank slate. I know not everyone has the same opportunity of going to university. Not everyone gets the same thing. But for me, it was, I get a blank slate. I can be whoever I want. And if people are going to judge me, let them. I had this mindset, and I was super lucky because I was already out, and these other queer people, they weren't out. And so they knew I was already out, so they naturally came to me, and then they slowly came out as well. And I was like, yeah, okay, this is kind of fun. I don't even have to fend for friends. They come to me by themselves. And so you form this little community, and then you discuss your things, like how traumatic it has been for not just you, but for other people. And you realize, oh, like, you know, it's not even like formal structured therapy, but like just talking to people and sharing your experiences is how you learn that there's like a lot of trauma going on, especially in South Asia. Oh my God, like I tell people, I'm pretty sure you can understand half of it as well. It's like there's this trauma bonding thing which South Asian people do and they go through. And when you talk to people, and then for me, it was my dad actually spotted that I really needed help because I was sick when I was like around 18 physically, and that took a toll on my mental health as well. And I used to get like anxiety attacks and these shutdowns, and that is when he basically spotted it, and we tried and talked to therapists, but then I moved to London, so I didn't start formal therapy until I was in London. But yeah, so I guess in that regard, I didn't have to convince my parents, as most South Asian people have to do in order to get therapy. My parents spotted it, and they were like, you really do need help in terms of that, because I think the biggest reason was that because they saw me go through it. They literally saw the panic attacks and how I used to freeze and go through all of that. So when I moved to LSE, I did get adjustments through LSE, and they also do provide you like counseling. So I went through that and talked about it to my friends as well. And that is how I got through it. I'm not gonna lie, when I say some of the therapy did not work for me, I lied to the therapist. I was like, oh yeah, this is definitely working. In reality, it wasn't working because it was meant for neurotypical people, not neurodivergent people. And then later on, I realized, okay, I'm neurodivergent, so I was more open about that. And my therapist, I was super lucky, she already had clients who were neurodivergent, so she was able to adjust it according to that. And that really helped me out.
That's so powerful. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I think it's so important when talking about this that, like, yes, we are South Asian women. I'm also neurodivergent. And these labels get imposed. I don't know if imposed is the right word, but like they get put on us, and we put them on ourselves to understand ourselves and so other people can understand us better. But there is so much more to us than this. I remember I was 10 when I moved to a very, very white town from Singapore, and I never thought about the fact that I was Indian until that point. Like, I mean, like, I spoke Hindi with my family, like, I am brown. I've always known I am brown, but it was only when I was 10 years old, and I was old enough to remember this point, where all of a sudden I was an ethnic minority, and that, like, minority mindset really, like, kicked in. And I can distinctly remember a life before that, and like then the next 10 years of my life and how that was as a young person to be like, I'm a minority. I'm different to every person that I share a room with. I'm brown. I'm a woman. I'm neurodivergent. I'm all these things. And that did not empower me in any way. It did not make me feel strong, because it made me feel, again, minority has this connotation of like, less than, right? Because it's
othered,
othered. And only now am I realizing that like I am those things, but I'm also so many other things. I'm funny, I'm smart, I'm a friend, I'm a sister, I'm whatever. And so let's wrap this conversation up by talking about labels and how you choose to create not just identifying with these like demographic labels, but like the person that you are and the values that you have.
I think, I was slightly older than you when I realized that I fall into one of those minority categories. It was when I was coming out in India. I think I was 17, and I didn't even realize that before that. I always felt different. Yeah, I did not just have the words for it. And so I was like, that came as a shock to me because I thought people did not care about that stuff, I was like, who even cares about if you're gay or bisexual or whatever? I remember when I came out, I lost 50,000 followers on my Instagram. I had people tell me that they love my content, but they can't support me because I'm gay. And I was like, what does that even mean? I just put on a label and you suddenly, I show support to the LGBTQ community, and you suddenly I become this whole person who is just not the same as before. And suddenly whatever I do has to represent the community or the communities that I'm from. Now that I'm sitting here in London, I have to somehow be that Indian girl, be the gay creator, be the neurodivergent creator, or the disabled creator, or whatever. And you have to be all those things. And I think it's labels, and these labels do help you, but they also it's not you who's trying to do that, it's people trying to box you into one of those categories. So as soon as I tell people or the internet that I'm gay, my entire personality becomes I'm the gay creator. Whereas I've been creating content for 9 years and I wasn't even out when I started off. And I feel like you get othered in that sense, but there's also people who are going to accept you beyond all of those labels. And finding those people is hard. It's always going to be hard. But it's also a journey in itself where you will find those people and then they're going to love you for who you are rather than for your labels. They're not going to care about that. Obviously, if you tell them, okay, yeah, I'm neurodivergent and I've got this X disabilities or I'm gay, that's part of your life. They're going to respect that bit. But they're going to look at you as a whole person rather than those labels. And so for me, it's been that I did not even realize I was minorities in 4 things until this year. And then suddenly there's this misconception with people as well. And they're you keep adding these things to your personality because you want to be different. This is what I literally got to hear from people. You say you're gay because you want to be different from other people. Excuse me? No one in their sane mind is going to put themselves under the category of neurodivergent or gay or whatever, because people discriminate against that. You don't just put on the label to be different or to be cool or trendy or whatever. That was the funniest thing that I heard. But also, don't pay attention to those people. People are always going to have something to say. And I'm not going to say I have it all figured out because I don't. It's the reality. I'm only 22. I don't know how these things work either. But I do have some experience just by being in the public eye that people are going to have a lot to say about every single thing, about your accent, about the way you dress, about the people you like, the people you hang out with, about your family. And that's always going to be there. Just protect your peace. Do not let them interfere with your life, because the parts that you share online is not the same as the parts that you're living in your real life. And I think the real life matters more than the world that you show online. I get it, that's part of the business, that's part of your job. But at the same time, your job doesn't really define you, because you're an entire person and you're supposed to live your life, and you're allowed to have good things in your life. And making that distinction is, I think, super important.
That is beautiful. And I was going to ask you, what would you say to young Sam starting out if you could? And that's the advice that you give to the audience. But I feel like you've really summed it up. But is there anything else that you would say to young Sam?
Yeah, I don't know, man. There's this thing where people talk about to the younger selves, and there's what's one piece of advice that you're going to give to your younger self. I feel like my younger self is very different to who I am. So I wouldn't want to change anything, because otherwise I wouldn't be here. all of those struggles that I've been through, that taught me resilience, all the illnesses that I had to go through, all the bullying at school or whatever I had to go through, was that, like, it shaped me who I am as a person today. So I think my only advice to younger Sam would be, keep going. Like, people are going to have opinions, just keep pushing forward, and please push forward in the right direction. You do not want to be in the wrong direction. But yeah, that's the only piece of advice, because I wouldn't go back in the past and change anything, because otherwise I wouldn't be this person that I am today, or I'm becoming. So to the audience, I'd say that, again, surround yourself with good people. And if someone is bad to you, do not be afraid to cut them off. I've given people multiple chances, and if I were to do it again, I might not give them so many chances, because they tend to hurt you again and again. So be mindful with who you trust is the only thing I'd say, I guess. Yeah.
That's amazing. I've learned so much from our conversation. I'm so grateful to you. I always wrap up the podcast with the theme of gratitude. So will you please share with us what you're most grateful for today?
I'm most grateful for my family. I put that every day in my journal as well, and I'm going to say it here today.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. You truly are an incredible, empowering, inspiring woman.
Thank you so much for having me. It was lovely.